Israeli military says the mosque was hiding rockets, making it a legitimate target under the rules of war. Welcome to America's News Headquarters, everyone. I'm Arthel Neville. Good to see you.
Hello, Arthel, and hello, everyone. I'm Eric Shawn. Well, this all comes as all 15 members of the United Nations Security Council have now called today for a ceasefire. It is their first response to this crisis. This, as the death toll is rising above 125, the offensive entering its 5th day. Israel's military trying to halt that barrage of Hamas terrorist rockets. GAZA militants so far have fired nearly 700 rockets at Israel. Over this deadly offensive, it is believed that Hamas has an arsenal of more than 10,000 missiles to try and kill Israelis. John Huddy is live in Gaza City with the very latest on the developments there on the ground. Hello, Jonathan.
Well, Eric, yeah, in terms of the barrage of rockets, we're getting reports that there was a barrage fired at Tel Aviv and the surrounding area there. And I can tell you this, within the past 15, 20 minutes, we've seen rockets fired from the vicinity of our location here, heading north towards, fired obviously at Israel. And within the last couple minutes, there were 2 heavy airstrikes, probably just a couple hundred yards from our location. They hit with such an impact and such force that the building we're in shook heavily. Most likely, they were Hamas targets, possibly where those rockets were launched, but I don't know that for sure. That has not been confirmed. But after the impact, we heard screaming, saw some black smoke, heard screaming, presumably the wounded and possibly dead being pulled out of there. We saw a similar scene earlier today. We went to the main hospital here in Gaza City, and right after an airstrike, it was a chaotic and frenzied scene as the wounded, as we later found out dead, were rushed in, many in civilian vehicles. They came in so fast to the entrance, some of them actually slammed into each other as those injured were being pulled out. So far, we've heard the latest toll has been 125 Palestinians hurt, or killed rather, here in Gaza, more than 1,000 injured, and that number is likely increasing as we speak. This, as we continue to get new video from the ground here of these airstrikes, and these airstrikes have been continuous over the past afternoon, the course of the afternoon and evening here. Rocket fire also being launched, and then the Israeli Air Force countering with the airstrikes. We've also heard what sounds like cannon fire, heavy artillery from off the coast being fired at targets here in Gaza City. And Eric, judging by the last couple hours, at least the time that we've been here, and certainly since all of this began on Monday, this is likely expected to continue. And needless to say, it's most likely going to be a long night ahead as I'm hearing yet another jet fighter come roaring into the area. Eric?
All right, John, we can hear that. Just listen just for a second. Those are Israeli warplanes, you think?
Yeah, fighters. They've been circling, those airstrikes that we heard. They got very close. They came roaring in, and then you hear the missile actually, come firing into the area, impact, explosion, the force shaking the building, and then you hear the screaming in the distance. And again, these 2 airstrikes have been very, very close to our location. And the sound of these fighters has been a constant sound, the growl, the roar of the engines, and also, Eric, the humming that we're hearing right now of drones overhead.
You can hear the warplanes and you can hear the drones. John Huddy, live on the ground. Very vivid report. Thank you, John, so much. So what, if anything, can be done to stop Hamas from attacking Israel and stop Israel from bombing Gaza in response? Coming up a little later on in our program, from Tel Aviv, we'll be talking to former Israeli ambassador to the United Nations, Daniel Gilliman, about all that. Right there.
And Eric, also in the Middle East, the Iraqi military flying thousands of volunteers out to reinforce government soldiers in their battle with Sunni militants. About 4,000 armed gunmen will eventually land in the city of Ramadi, about 70 miles west of Baghdad. Now, most of the volunteers are Shiites, answering the call from the nation's top cleric to defend against the Sunnis. The militants have taken over much of Iraq's northern and western regions.
Now to the Iranian nuclear program. Turns out the Secretary of State, John Kerry, might be running a little late for those talks in Vienna. He is scheduled for those nuclear negotiations that are supposed to have an agreement by July 20th with Iran, along with the other world leaders. Well, he's in Afghanistan now, helping that nation through the presidential election crisis. The Secretary of State was holding separate meetings with the separate candidates who were all contesting last month's presidential runoff. The talks are focusing on an audit of the vote conducted by the United Nations. The situation seems to be jeopardizing U.S. plans for a stable Afghanistan after our American troops leave.
Well, dangerous lightning forces a Seattle-bound plane to land in Salt Lake City. The flight from Denver was diverted when lightning damaged the airplane's weather radar. None of the 168 passengers